Can you give me the number once again? I actually lost the number.
Sir, I'm sending my number through chat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yeah, please see if you got the.
Thank you so much, sir. I just joined.
Okay.
Sir, actually, right now I am connecting through my laptop.
Yeah, yeah.
Please.
Okay. So let us start. So today I will be talking about the Canadian poetry. So the Canadian poetry, if you see, um, we talk about um, the initial growth of the Canadian poetry. In this Canadian poetry, um, you know, um, poetry beginning in we'll talk about the beginning of the poetry in Canada, which we have already discussed yesterday. But with the mental acceptance of the things as they are, and a new group of poets appeared suddenly, and who took the responsibility of regrouping the elements of reality. And in his book, Paradise, Essay of Myth, Art, and Reality, Louis Dudek, states that Canadian poetry emerged out of the inner necessity and is a proof rather of a predicament that than a solution of the great question in this or any other time. So, poet like G.D. Roberts, A.G.M. Smith, then Earl Burney, took the responsibility of searching into the meaning of life in the Canadian environment, and their poetry reveals a special kind of cultural anxiety, which becomes a medium to handle the universal issues and the cross issues, and even the and it encourages other poets of their generation to develop. So to have a proper understanding about this Canadian poetry, uh, we must try to understand or study the nature of poetry, which should not be mistaken for the poetry of natural landscape. Here and rather, it stands for the exploration of the landscape, map taking and naming of the country, the rediscovering of history. So, consequently, a very different concept of the relation of man and nature appears in Canadian poetry. So, through the poets, uh, though you find the poets, have sometimes recognized the beauty and the lavishness of nature, they have not hesitated to project their unexplained rejection of moss crowned monsters, where cruelty which seem to be the law of nature. And it appears that the poets have a split attitude of acceptance and rejection. So you find in Canada, it is commonly known the only season in winter, and its landscape, and is either dead or actively hostile to man. But spring is distrusted here, uh, which is written by Alden, Nowland, which states in his poem, April in the New Brunswick. And awfully, you find destructive moods of nature which dominate the long poems like Pratt's, the Titanic, and Bernie's David and Bushed, which present another variety of death by nature. So you find the attitude of the poet towards nature underwent a noticeable change, later, but it is the poets of the early decades of the 20th, who made the initial efforts to feel nature as a spiritual substance. So you find the though the earliest, the Canadians anthology, you find the importance was given, to E.H. Deward's, selection from Canadian poets, which was published in 1864. And it is A.J.M. Smith's, the Book of Canadian Poetry, which appeared in 1943, that presented the changes of taste and quality in poetry, which was written between 1948 and 1957. So many subsequent anthologies like Smith's Oxford Book of Canadian Verse, which was written in 1960, and the Modern Canadian Verse, written in 1967, include the representation work of both English and French.
Good evening, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
here it is written that Moss crowned monster. So, what is the meaning of Moss? Moss crowned monster means?
What I didn't understand.
Sir, in the first paragraph, you said that through the poet have sometimes recognized the beauty and lavishness of nature. They have not hesitated to project their unexplained rejection of Moss crowned monster. So here,
Oh,
the poet,
unexpected. Yeah, moss crowned monster. Moss crowned. What moss crowned is, uh, the one that we talk about. Moss crown is, it is explaining about the moss is, that small flowers, flowerless green plants.
okay, okay, flowerless.
Moss, um, uh, that what we say in Odia is Seoli.
Ah, okay.
Moss crowned. Okay, moss crowned means it is full of moss. Okay, and
Like
it is
fungi,
talking.
like fungus, na sir? Actually, that means
Ah,
green
yes,
substance.
it is not fungus. It
No,
is.
it is not fungus, but it is looking like fungus.
Yes, it is moss. Is that something that small flowerless green plant that lacks root, and you find mostly in the damp regions.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So you find the so yes, as I was telling, you find to understand this in the mid 19 20th century. You find Smith and Brown, encouraged to go through the historical insights of the Canadian poetry, and it helped in two various ways. One is, they tried to criticize it, saying that poetry is poetry appropriate to Canadian experience, which was used by George Woodcock. So you find if the poetry of the early decades, like Sangster and Pratt and Lampman, Robert, all these people, they tried to visualize this through, and was translates the landscape into words. So you find the Canadian poetry has a very new sense of sharing a vision of voices at the global level, but without losing its intensity of personal vision about the immediate world, what is going on, what was going on at that point of time. And that does not mean that they had a very heterogeneous group of Canadian poets or something like that, but in attempt to find their own voices self-consciously, they happen to discover their collective national identity. All these people, all these poets, they wanted to get the national identity, and how? Because of their poetry. Clear? Am I clear?
Yes, sir. You mean
Yeah.
to say, sir, the
Yes,
poets
sir.
actually focused on getting national, like what I say, recognition, national recognition.
The national identity means recognition. Yes.
Sir, but I want to ask you one thing. What is the difference between English poetry, that means British poetry, and Canadian poetry?
There are a lot of. I told you the characteristics of the Canadian poetry yesterday. I have told you, and there were a lot of remarkable poetic upsurge which carried many trends in the modernist movement, and then there were extraordinary outbursts of the poetry, which yield amazing results. And you find the poetry in Canada became the most significant form of the artistic activity, and you find this Canadian poetry, preoccupied a lot of time, culture, which was reflected through that, and a deep involvement with their Canadian national identity also. But yes, there was no it should not be, we should not mix it with the political issues, or the you know the colonial goals that lead to visualizing the realities of Canadian experience. Okay.
Okay, sir, got it.
You try to, what I would suggest is, you try to read the history, because unless you don't read the history, you will not be able to understand what is British, you know what is the difference, what is poetry. And you should read history of English literature.
Okay, sir.
What is your background? Means your
Sir, mine is I'm a civil engineer,
okay,
and basically, my background is science. And after that, I completed my MBA in marketing and HR, and uh,
okay.
right
And
now
what
I'm
is the
doing
purpose
BA.
of doing MA in English?
Sir, actually, I'm doing BA right now because of my family issues. Actually, I left my technical job and
Okay,
now pursuing my teacher job, and now I am a teacher and
okay,
teaching English. But my goal is to achieve new things in literature because now I am as working as a teacher. I want to teach English, so I want to learn more about this literature.
okay, okay. Good, good, good. No, what you should do is because you don't have a background, you know, because you come from
Yes,
another stream,
yes, sir.
you need to be very strong because I understand this the IGNO English. Uh, if you don't, if you do not make your base strong, it will be difficult for you to complete this degree.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you better you read the history of English literature. Then only
Uh,
you will be able to link to what, because I don't I am I do not know what I am saying. If you could, if you are able to link, because you don't have any you, I don't know
Yes,
if
sir.
you have
I
already.
do not have that foundation of that English literature, but which is already in graduation and master graduation. But right now, I am trying my best, and I will trying to link up with this literature. Like now, if you have any PDF regarding this history of English literature, sir, could
Yeah,
you
yeah,
please?
I will
Thank you so
just
much.
remind me in the group. I will send you the PDF.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was telling you about uh, so you find literature, you find um, the Canadian. Sorry, what I was telling, I forgot. Where I was,
Sir,
I told you
yes,
about.
sir. You are saying that the poets getting national recognition.
Yeah, yeah, yes, national identity that they were getting, and and through the poetry, they wanted to gain their national identity. And you see these voices there exist in the Canadian poetry, a very new sense of sharing the vision, or the voices at the global level without losing the intensity of a personal vision about the immediate world, as I said. And you find in this attempt to find their own voices self-consciously, they happen to discover their collective national identity. And uh, these you can say the works of Dorothy Livesey, whose intense feminism and personal experiences combine with the political concerns which make her a truly liberated, vigorous poet. Similarly, you see the PK Page's poetry, which is remarkable, verbal economy and intensity. And you find poets like, Layton, Waddington, Margaret Avishon. They all, talk about world's, perception, which is rich in perplexities of faith and, doubt. So, see, myth, the innovated myth, and symbols which were used, the images which were used, they were all, overinterpreted from the old ones, because it was used to translate their ideas and visions of life through all these. Okay, so you find the way very innovatory poets who succeeded in creating, a lot of resemblances between the content and the form of the poem. And you find the poets also who were very individualistic, and they preferred, to choose their own manner and style, mingling the traditions with innovations. For instance, we can talk about Leonard Cohen. As many critic aptly talk about the Canadian poets and their brilliance, which are used for romantic in temperament, and diverse in their approaches. So we find this glows out of a compelling intermediary world of magic and dream. Okay, so you find if Dennis Lee, rejects Canadian society because of its prevailing ills and become a political poet, Margaret Atwood, being an experimental poet, is forms shows the psychological and the historical things in thought. So Canadian poetry tends to believe in William Jane's notion that reality keeps changing, and it grows out of Canada's uh, pluralistic society, mosaic culture and enduring domestic uh, domestic mm, values, in face of holistic nature, which adheres to the authentic indigenous system in the face of appearances of multiple realities here and there. So you find, do you understand what is indigenous when I'm talking about indigenous?
Local, sir? Local.
The local
And
resident.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you understanding?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
No, okay.
Yes, sir.
Sridevi madam, are you getting me?
yes, sir. Very clear. Very,
Okay,
very
okay.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, when we are talking about, the Canadian imagination, the Canadian imagination is an essay which was written by David Stout, which has, successfully observed, that at the center of every imaginative response, buried, however deeply, is a vision of human existence. But the Canadian imagination is different, as it is obsessed with the limitations rather than the possibilities of human existence. And this happens because of two specific reasons. One is the survival. Survival rather than freedom is the great fact of Canadian life. And the second is holding on to what is known, or said safe, to preserve the values, however you say humble they may be, and it is at its center. So all these, lends the Canadian poetry the image of bleak landscape, which is, turbulent and destructive. And you find this gives an image of a very small and a very humble, adobe, which no doubt, promises a domestic security. So you find uh, they are very sincere in thought and emotions, and contemporary in technique and expressions. But you find the Canadian poets try to find through poetry different ways of measuring the problems. And it's related feelings, saving it. On the other hand, you find intellectualism, and on the other, from sheer inauthenticity, you find Louis Dudek, sums up with a characteristic of Canadian poetry, saying that Canadian poetry is written out of inner necessity and is the proof rather than predicament, that than a solution, of a great question in this or any other time. Okay. And this was written beyond autobiography, in Paradise Essays on Myths, Art and Reality in 1920. So you find Margaret Atwood, states that poetry is a lens that magnifies and highlights the qualities of Canadian creative impulse, and offer a pathway to an effective understanding of its life and surroundings. So you find Canadian poets, gets associated with different, fashionable movement in the society, and have become its cultural heroes, and countercultural leaders. And you find, on the other hand, you find that they are also the caretakers of the collective truth, sometimes that would resist the oppression of race, gender and class. And on the other, they are the source and strong intellectual and emotional content, sometimes something which enables them to be civilizing influence on the people. So the poet become a means of regeneration in the ever changing society. They make poetry carry the same aim as religion, myth and even science. Are you all getting?
Sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. Oh, I would like to know that through this poetry, through this Canadian poet, means not only Canadian poetry, but through poetry, what is the objective? What is the aim of a poet? What is the poet trying to say through these poetry? Supriya?
Sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, through this poetry, I just understood that every time that what is in poet is in that particular situation, thinking about the same thing what is going on during that time, and he is trying to interpret the same thing to the audience also, and they want to know them that this is the situation, and sometimes they are having some other poems like regarding that landscape and all the things. They are also referring to the nature. Am I correct?
Yes, but no, like, uh,
Sir.
yeah, Sridevi, yes. Please go ahead, Sridevi.
Sir, I
Yeah,
think poetry is a very beautiful medium to express one's own. It gives liberty to any poet to express his innermost feelings and emotions, and then, it's a form, where it can convey the messages at a broader level, and it's like, it reflects this unique perspective of what's happening in and around. Is inner or outer worlds. That's what I think. So it's like it brings broadly about human condition or the world around
correct,
us.
correct, correct.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
correct. What you are saying is correct, but uh, you know, you are saying that what is the poet's perspective? So my question is, through this poetry, how is the poet trying to reach the readers? A part answer what Supriya said is correct. Mm, but what else? That, yeah.
It's trying to
Sir,
establish.
Yes, yes, Shridevi. Please continue.
Is it something that a reader? I mean, a poet conveys to his readers the the what is his like identity? Is it something like that, sir? What exactly? I didn't get the question properly. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, no, no. It's my question is, suppose I am a poet and I'm writing, and
Yes,
readers are
sir.
reading. So, what is the benefit? My benefit I have already, because I am putting up my emotions, my feelings, what I feel about it, and I put. But what about my readers? What are my readers taking?
So isn't it to identify their own that what the likeliness, whatever you're feeling, like a poet conveys, that gives a
Hmm.
pleasure to readers. Like it's a beautiful way, like the way the pleasure we derive from a
Oh, yeah,
movie.
yeah. Pleasure is a part. Yes, correct. But
Uh, and
sir, may I?
it resonates with their own feelings. It like suppose I with ideas, feelings, expressions, readers do get it
okay,
like.
okay. Yes, Supriya.
Sir, actually, through the poet is showing his emotion, but it is giving the clear side view, and it is also giving the point of view to the audience that you have to think about this thing by this way. Maybe that
No,
one the
yeah, we cannot impose that on our readers.
yes, sir. We cannot impose, but
Impose,
we
but
are giving
that,
some idea. Yes, sir.
that becomes a learning. That
Okay.
becomes a learning. Okay, means the readers, through that poetry, they learn something. What they are going to do or not, that's not my concern. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you find in the 20th century uh, there is a general shift from a mere consciousness of the past to what is valuable in the present. And the contemporary poets attempt to be mythical, as poetry offers them possibilities to be new by making them take excursion into the world of ideas. Okay, so there is an attempt to create such poems in which ideas and arrangement of words on the page are meant to show a tendency to present and preserve the essence of the new world, in which the physical and the physical is endowed with the spiritual substance. So you find the Canadian poets who are very overpowered by fear of the unknown world and is haunted by the loneliness, chisel out their experiences into the bone essential statements. So they share a curious kind of cultural anxiety. Yes, Rashmita.
Yes, sir.
Yes. We are doing block 2. We are talking about the Canadian
Okay,
poetry.
sir. Okay, sir. I don't know who is plug.
Do you
Okay,
have
sir. Thank you.
Canadian literature? Rashmita, are you having Canadian literature as a paper? Okay, so later you find the Canadian poetry, in general, and the nature poetry in particular shows a range of attitude, which is mutualness, and it has added three important characteristic to the Canadian nature of poetry. So you find these important changes that you find in the contemporary Canadian poetry talks about the language of the poem in the natural speech of living people, the identity and the occupations of the poets, themselves, which have changed. They, don't have to belong to some form of intellectual aristocracy. And even you see the aim and the intent of the Canadian poetry, which itself has changed. So today you find poetry talks about today's world, as well as, of the things that are, timeless, like, uh, we can talk about love, death, or birth, all these. And whatever may be the topic, human emotions have reference to all these things, contained in human world. Am I right? Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we can say then, through this, there is a search of roots. There is interaction between the mindscape and the landscape, the interior landscapes, the the political, and the becoming political and becoming personal. You find the nationalistic concerns which are reflected, the native concerns and the poetry by women, which is also shown clear. So the native voices are, and the voices add a new dimension to the Canadian poetry. And artwood, you find artwood, Ondat G, and uh, Croat Stitch, all these, novelists, poets, whose poetry have made great impact. And you find Artwood, began with the circle game in 1968, and then came, the animals in that country in 1968, and power politics in 1970. So you find Artwood's, political, or the powerful images, her evocation of the, physical disgust, and her Gothic, consciousness, are all controlled by a very flat, authoritative voice. And it is poetry of the statement with an epigrammatic edge. So you find that um, Canada has a very distinctive sort of, the contemporary long poems, and these are largely, viewed, critical views have been given from this particular genre. So we find that in 1980s, the form most favored by the Canadian poets have been, the long poems. And one can say that Pratt's, Towards the Last Spike, which was published in 1952, sets the trend in the modern times. So you find an extremely, remarkable work was Bowering's Kerrisdale Elegies, which was published in 1984. And one of the best book of Canadian long poem is Smaro Camborelli. Smaro Camborelli, which was published in 1991. On Scaro Camborelli is a Canadian poet, and the work, which was published in 1991, is on the edge of the genre, the contemporary Canadian long poem. So these are, some of the 20th century Canadian, poetries. Am I clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How many of you have read about the Canadian poetry?
So we had one question for assignment. So for that, whatever
Oh, okay. You
long,
went in for
but
that.
sir, basically poetry is not at all kind of. I mean, is there any way the that is like like yesterday also I was asking, sir, can we have more of this, some PDF links and something where we can explore the meanings and the more elaborate
Yeah,
explanation kind.
but because you don't have specific poetries.
Sir.
You have like you have been given like um, writers, poets. So you don't have specific poetries. Yeah, some blocks have defined specific poetries, but not all. So that is why you have to take a general idea, the
Okay.
perspective of how the what was the approach of the poet. What were the areas that the poet was trying to cover.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So, okay, let me tell you about Walcott. Derek Walcott. He was born in 1930, and he was the winner of a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1992. And he was a Caribbean poet from the island of Saint Lucia, and he does not he does a lot of teaching and quite mobile. So the major influence on him are the American poet Robert Lowell and the Irish poet Seamus Heaney. What I'm telling you is, yes, let me just add to this, that if you see in your examination, because you have taken this paper, I'm just telling you, in your examination you have to appear any uh, 5 questions. There are 8 blocks. So out of 8 blocks you will get 8 questions, one question from each block. So, if you find any difficulty in any of these blocks, you can keep it as optional. I hope I am I
Yes, sir.
audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. And
Yes,
it's
sir. And
yes.
we got your point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so if you find Walcott's poetry is very, deeply concerned with conflict between the heritage of the European and the West Indian culture. So in his one of his poems, which was published in 1990, Omeros here, he imaginatively, uses the Homeric natives as the basis of a modernist long poem, and you find um, he, the major theme that he was writing is the dichotomy between the black and the white. Okay, do you understand what is dichotomy?
Yes, sir.
The contrast. Clear. So you find he was he was contrasting between the black and the white, the subject and the ruler, and the elements of both Caribbean and the Western civilization which is present in his culture and ancestry. So one well known poem, a far cry from Africa, from in a green uh, night, poems in 1948 to 60. This all deals directly with Walcott's sense of cultural confusion. And in another poem, you find the schooner flight from his collection, The Star Apple Kingdom. The poet, uses, you know, Trinidadian sailor named Shabin to apprise his own, place as a person of mixed blood in a world divided into whites and black. So you find that the you find all these Walcott's poems show a greater uh, cosmopolitanism as compared to many other Canadian poetry. So on that G also has a lot of cosmopolitanism too, but that goes more into the novels like the English Patient. So Lowell, you know as stated earlier, was a major influence of Walcott. So you find uh, Walcott is has a very a sense of what. Just a minute. Yeah. So Walcott, Lowell's a sense of history was congenial to Walcott's own, because it had classical, European, colonial, and the post-colonial all fused in it. So Walcott's is a hybrid, sensibility, and often his language has a healthy hybridity too. So Canadian poetry, or as a whole, has less hybridity in it. And then we have another poet, that is Seamus Heine. Seamus Heine was a Nobel Prize winner in literature in 1995, and he hails from Northern Ireland. And he was in the he was in the Republic of Ireland, but he was born at Northern Ireland, and he does a lot of extensive teaching, and he has written on other poets also. So you find some of his books and prose are The Government of the Tongue, published in 1988, The Station Island in 1984, which are remarkable volumes of the poems. Like Eleven's poem in 1965, Death of Naturalists in 1966. So Heyman's, was trying to reflect the imaginative richness and the intellectual depth of his rendering of the island of the 60s through the 90s. And he was remarkable, depth, of feeling about both geographical terrains and human suffering. A.W. Auden is influence on him. And so you also find, Robert Lowell also is a big influencer. So the geographical sense of Ireland comes from from this from his poems. And this talks about the conflict, and that has correlated in the poetry of the writer. We also have AK Ramanujan. Do you know AK Ramanujan? Have you heard about AK Ramanujan? Who is AK Ramanujan? Supriya?
Sir, I only know Ramanujan mathematician. Sorry.
No, 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 no. AK Ramanujan, an Indian poet.
Yes, sir. Now I just reading the book and I got it. A.K. Ramanujan, Indian poetry, Mysore, India.
Yeah, he is from Mysore. And you find Ramanujan uh, was a university professor in the United States. Okay, he was a professor.
He was a professor as well as a translator, sir. Right?
Translator, he has translated a lot of poems in India also. The famous poem River by A.K. Ramanujan.
Sir, I have one small question I want to ask you. That
Yes.
here, in right here, you just said that uh, in Simon Henny, there is like in his poem, he is basically showing the Northern Ireland's civil conflict, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So at that time, civil conflict, it means that Europeans are ruling over them, or what?
Uh, no, no, sorry, I didn't get you. Come again. What?
Sir, civil conflict in Northern Ireland. Why there was a civil conflict? And because he was showing in his poem that most of the things that about civil conflict in the Northern Ireland. So
Uh,
why there was a conflict in civil conflict? That I want to know.
Not civil conflict can be for anything. There can be a violent conflict. You find maybe between the overwhelming Protestants and the who desired the province to remain part in the United Kingdom, and overwhelming the Roman Catholic nationalists who wanted Northern Ireland to become a part. Okay, so
Okay, sir.
civil. If you say there is a fight, say near a house, that is a civil. Say a
Yes, sir.
civil. This thing. Then you ask me why? What is the reason of having that fight?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You
Actually,
understand?
yes, sir.
Your question is becoming a little.
Complicated.
No, no,
Sir,
it's not
actually,
becoming complex. It's becoming little baseless relating to the to
actually, sir,
literature.
I thought that because most of the
No, it's
like
not
it
something.
was.
No, no, it's not something relating to that particular poet.
Yes, sir. Actually, David Walcott, you said that in previous, David Walcott was basically, he was showing the world about the conflict between African and European, like white
Hmm.
and black. So I thought that this poet also showing some conflict between. So that's why I thought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
It is showing. It is showing. No, 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 no. You're asking me the reason why
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the he's showing the conflict, but the conflict. If you find what is the reason of the conflict, that you will find it in history only. You understand?
Yes, sir. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, I was talking about A.K. Ramanujan. He was a mm, he was a linguist, and he's written many poems, and you find that basically he has talked about Hinduism, the Hindu upbringing, and is to modern the American environment. His poem Pleasure uh, is a part which talks about the full of sensuous, particularly Ramanujan's range of themes and the style, which is breathtaking. And you have the sense of rootedness, which, and this you find often existed in the tension with an anxious sense of cultural displacement. Now, what do you mean by cultural displacement?
Cultural displacement means that some, uh, like in India, you are following Hinduism, but in wherever you are going at that time, most of the people there belong to another culture, and you are getting the conflict, or you are mm, unable to adjust with that culture. That is called cultural displacement.
Okay. Mm, what is displacement?
Excuse me, sir.
To transfer from one place to another.
Yeah, moving. And cultural displacement is, if somebody else wanted to answer, Sridevi?
Sir, not being in place is displacement, of course. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you are like you're empowered by something else, or you're not able to do what you've been doing. I think it's like culturally you're not able to, by imposition it could be.
Hmm.
Is that so, sir? Is that so that when cultural displacement is happening, either it could be you're being empowered or overpowered by something else, or you're forced to do so, something like that. It gives me some negative feeling like this.
Mm, okay. You can say
Yes, sir.
what Supriya said, you go to another culture, you get separated from your roots.
Yes, sir.
And, you're having the imposition of another culture, the imposition of another culture.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. that
Yes,
is
sir.
that is
Yes.
also very important. And separating is a different, yes, it is a part, but then the imposition of another culture, or replace that culture, is the cultural displacement. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And that you will find in Ramanujan's work, in talking about the two worlds, that is India and America's experience. And any one of you have read Sudha Murthy's Dollar Bahu? Anyone? Okay.
No, sir.
Otherwise, I would have given an example from there. Anyways, mm, yeah.
Sir, I just read a brief, like one of these Sudhamurthy's, this thing I just briefly read, but it won't be calling reading because I didn't read the actual novel.
Okay. I wanted to tell you about the um, protagonist, Gauramma, the mother-in-law, who always, wanted, was talking about, mm, dollars, how the elder son was in US and the elder daughter-in-law, and she was praising them a lot, and they were given importance because you know dollars were flowing from there. But with time, when she went there, and she was a typical Indian woman, she saw that culture, Indian culture, has no value there in US. Mm, no value means because of their culture, their lifestyle, people forget. So, and they adapt that particular culture, the cultural displacement. Okay, so coming to um, two poems. One is by Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood's Swibble. Mm, just a minute. Okay, so if we talk about Margaret Atwood, Margaret Atwood basically talked about the different themes. Atwood constantly pits, civilization against the wilderness surrounding it. And society against the savagery from which it aroused. So she considers these oppositions to be, some of the defining principles of Canadian literature. They also provide a metaphor for the division which, within the human personality. Some, society, civilization, and you can say culture represent the, rational content side of humanity, which, while the, wild forest represents the very opposite, the irrational, the primal and carnal, impulses that existed in every living being. So, in the animal, in that country, Atwood dramatizes the civilized urge to ignore the wildness lurking just over the horizon. In, progressive insanities of the pioneer, she captures this theme which particular vividness. And artward elaborates on the uselessness of defending oneself against the wilderness that I'd already told you yesterday in the journals of Sujana Modi, as an account of the European immigrant struggle, to navigate the wilderness of Canada, her adapted home, and almost every poem deals with this tension in same form. In you can say this is a photograph of me, the serene natural setting, which presents a startling contrast to the human tragedy which it masks. So the glossy mountains and the lakes and more lakes depicts on the wall in at the tourist center in Boston. Okay, uh, just a minute. So you find that in postcards and other poems of that era, cosmetic improvements of the natural world do a little to mask, the savagery that precede human interventions. The landscapes in Artwood's poems, which are harsh and brutal, which are wild and unconquerable, like the heart of darkness within all humans. You also find the inevitability of death. Artwood demonstrates the remarkable determination confront death in her poetry in another elegy, and she asks, and you find in flowers the speaker observes a dying father and realizes that she will undergo the same experience. Nothing can stop the relentless march of death. Are you all getting?
Yes, sir.
So you find Atwood has written a number of good poetry. The Animal in the Country in 1968, Procedures from the Underground in 1970, Power Politics in 1971, and Two Headed Poems in 1978. And you find her well known novel is The Surfacing that you will be reading in one of the blocks. She writes in a stark style, the point of view of which is often of an alienated individual. There is often a disturbance of everyday world, and she finds it a place of deceptive appearance. So you find the poem A Sibyl by Margaret Atwood is 11 verse paragraphs, and the and you find The first two words of the paragraph, where the speaker gives the location of her Sibyl and the location and the location in one of the bottles on the shelves in her house. So below the speaker's window, on the darkening background, children play at warring of the flower beds, and she adds, you know, parenthetically, that every woman should have one. And on the shelves, you find are thin green wine bottles which are emptied of the small dinners, and there are also Ovaltine jars of orange, brown color, and that have been, emptied of easy sleep. And in one of them is the poet's. So you find the wrinkled as a pickled baby. She is like a two-headed prodigy at a freak fair, and she is hairless, and her sightless eyes are like white of the eggs. So the speaker starts looking over the fading city, and the Sibyl calls to her, where with the many voices of the children, and she reminds her of the inevitability of death. She tells the poetess that coupling of plurality won't help her as a poet. And then you find the time passes away. So the poetess talks of her present predicament. Okay. Uh, Please excuse me for 2 minutes.
Sure, sure.
Okay, I've given the poem in the chat. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, sorry. This is a poem which was written by Leonard Cottrell. Okay, this is not written by Atwood. Just a minute, I'll give you the poem written by Atwood. Okay, I will send you in the yeah, I'll
But
send you in the group. Okay. Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
so here you find that in this poem, the last three words, brings the focus back to the poetess and her sibyl, a necessary sibyl that there are omens of rockets, and the poetess knows it, and times run out to the ticking hip of man, and his twitching skull jerks on loose vertebra in the poetess kitchen. So flower beds predict it, and the poetess says that the city burns with an afterglow of explosions as the streetlights all come on, and the thing that calls itself she right now doesn't care. And she leaves, that to her necessary sibyl. That's, what she's for, with her, safely bottled anguish and her glass despair. Then we have another poem by Michael, uh, you know, uh, Ondarchi, the letters and other worlds. Just a minute. Yeah, Letters and Other World by Michael, Ondarji is a poem which is an examination of the last years of the poet's father, who lived the turbulent and the mind-breaking life of alcoholism and neurosis caused by the family strife and addiction. And the other world of is the world of poetry and letters, in which his father uh, for lived for few years of his life. So the poet is sympathetic towards his dead father, and thought he never explicitly criticizes his mother, and he has disfavored her as one of the causes of the father's troubled life. In fact, you see, it seems that the father is meant to symbolize the peaceful East. His father was a mixed Sri Lankan, and his mother seems to represent the West and its divorce and disharmony between spouses beyond a few years. So the poem tells the whole story of his father's life during the last few years. And his father had given to drinking heavily, and he uh, was also used to hiding in his room for longer periods, apparently, doing nothing. But after the death of the man, the son found a lot of letters and poems that his father had written. And in the letters and poems, letter which means, literature in the archaic sense, he finds that there was peace, equilibrium, and repose. And the poem narrates the story, which in story is in a not very simple manner. It includes rather the uh, surrealistic images, and beside the personal and the local references which abound in the poem also complicate the reading, to some extent. So this is a nostalgic poem based on the history of the persona, family, father being, the central figure, and there are several instances of geographical, autobiographical, and historical events that initiate the poem in a personal tone and make it drift away in a common theme of reminiscence, attachment to family roots and a sense of cultural fragmentation, and is evident in Ondaatje's other works. His father is portrayed as a drunkard, an eccentric and angry man in the initial part of the poem. The persona may be, maybe Ondarji himself narrating his feelings and experiences in his cross cultural childhood. But the persona's father is represented as fearful, angry, and mysterious yet full of feelings, reflected in his seldom written letters. And there is an abundance of several expressions leading readers into ambiguities and incoherence. So the attachment of the speaker of his father is marked by the loneliness of the geographical territories, the globe of fear of the first stanza, which shrinks in town of fear. And the third stanza, jumps immediately into the dead state of the speaker's father, who is, that is, who's drunk, lying flat as an enclosed in an enclosed room with the use of stream of consciousness technique. And the poet switches on to another episode of his father's early life of romance, punctuated by divorces from the wife, bored by the intermittent divorces, and he used to go away by trains, then again used to return to the Selenasi town. So perhaps why why he was returning to join the religious rituals and drinking. So the multi-dimensional personality of his father is an explicit, as is shown as an activist for the independence of Ceylon in 1948. Okay, so are you all getting me?
Sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Rashmita, are you getting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the different bits and pieces of impression are attached together, through they where they apparently lack coherence. And an episode of the speaker's mother also finds a place. Was, she was bad at driving, and she was, attached by villagers when she was, seen driving. So you find the 14 years of his parents' conjured life was tense, prone to any mishappenings. And once the father pretend, you know, to away by swimming after a ship, while the mother acted as if that event did not affect her. And another stone in this married life feel when the eccentric father filled a paper of divorce, but immediately the mother retorted and wrote to the editor to dismiss the content of the paper, arguing that he was drunk. So, followed by all these events, the speaker's father moved to liquor and enclosed himself in his room, where he produced several pieces of art mingled with realistic impulses like speeches, dreams, apologies, and letters. So his write ups contain a neat description of flowers, schemes for the household works, and the new arrangements of the facilities like electric. And this stanza mentions more positive and responsible part of the father. So the old man even radically, changed his testaments towards his children, presented himself as a loving father, started loving to be with family members till he died. So, beginning with the presentation of father as an embodiment of fear, loveliness, and the speaker tries to end with an overwhelming affection and attachment to his father. The different bad, notorious, the unsocial character of the old man is also disclosed without a tinge of hyperbole to show a facet on one's life. And yet you find he is not virtually bad father, because he has equally pleased his family members with love towards his later life. And these eccentricities of the old man may have sprouted from his dualistic blood and culture. As a result, he could neither exactly fit himself into the Europeans nor into the Seleucids. So the sense of cultural loss is also found in the poem. And Ondaatje's nostalgia intensifies, and he wants to merge into his past life in Ceylon. Love of owing, past is so powerful that bad episodes provides cheerful, emotional moment to the writer, and that he is trying to, precisely, recreate the lost past, which is raw, crude, but very fascinating. So the father had different worlds to live. That was drinking, traveling, politics, the tense of marriage, and family, which showed different facets of life, of which, his letters were remarkably proliferating his desire to live the world of feeling and art. So this poem has a very long, has long been considered as one of the Ondatji's finest poems, because of the controlled tone as the poem moves from a comedy to deeply moving simplicity, which is breathtaking. And in this poem he speaks lovingly of his father's life as a terrifying comedy of alcohol and outrageous acts. So the poet first attempts to place and his father's ghost, or his father's ghost, signaling the essential functionality of all autobiography. The fact that even memory is a shaping and is a making, that it can never be innocent representation. So the poet wants or manages. So you find the poem manages to juxtapose the farce with despair, the two modes of discourse clashing and contradicting, acquiring a dialogic equilibrium that is, the father, which could not maintain, and finally, its emotional power, which resides in the tension between the two modes. So, this is all about the poem Letters and Other Worlds. Hello,
Yes, sir.
am I clear? You,
Sir,
you have to read a little bit more
Yes, sir.
about, both the, poets, Artwood and Ondaatje. Clear?
Sir, if possible, can you please send some PDF in the group for these two poets, Ondaji and Atul?
There is exactly no PDF, relating to one poem. Um, Let me just find out. I was trying to search some, research papers. Also, I could not get, because not much work has been done on these Canadian poets.
Uh, Sir, as you explained that Ondaji's letters and other world,
Mhm.
it is mainly focused on his memories of his father and about his childhood, uh, that
Yeah,
tragic
yeah, yeah,
event.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
in Atud, like Margaret Atwood's poem, A Sibyl, what
Mm.
is the theme of this poem?
Theme, you can say that it surrounds. 1 minute. So you can talk about, mostly it talks about the basic um, theme, you can say. Confrontation of the woman standing, the oracles of the prophecies, and the depiction, um, which talks about tradition, which reflects in a woman the the predictions which shows in which is which reflects in the legends and literature. uh
Are we talking about Sibyl, sir?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Sibyl, isn't it about, like, I think as far as my understanding goes, it's a prophetic ability
Correct,
represented
correct,
as per
correct. Yeah,
Greek
yeah, yeah.
mythology.
The woman,
Yeah.
reflecting the.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Atwood here is trying to, like, it's Sibyl as like Sibyl is a symbolic this thing for female identity and agency, and that comes through like complexities that arises through this thing in everyday,
Yeah,
like.
she was asking about, what is the theme, means what is Atwood trying to reflect. That is what she's asking through the poem.
So I think is she's talking about the theme of power and prophecy, that every the role of the woman in society.
Yeah, yeah, that is what I was telling. The women's prophecies, which is reflected through this poem.
Yes,
Basically,
yes.
that means it is showing that feminism about she is trying to show the feminism, woman power, empowerment or woman power.
Yeah, but feminism. No, no, you have to understand what is feminism and the waves of feminism. Do you know what are the waves of feminism?
Uh,
Supriya, feminism is not something that talks about only females. You have to understand what is feminism and the waves of feminism. Then only you can place what is where, what is where feminism is being talking about. It talks about prophecies of female, of a woman.
okay, sir. I will do some research about that. If I will, I am not able
You
to
try-
understand, then I will ask you tomorrow.
yeah, you read about the theories of feminism.
Yes, sir. Definitely, I will do.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, some of the important other important poets that has been reflected in your some of the other important poems which has been reflected is the Bear on the Delhi Road by Earl Burney, the Elegy of for Our Grandfather by Al Purdy, Envoy by Ellie Mandel, Coyote Sees the Prime Minister by Thomas King, and The Green Rains by Dorothy Livesey. So all these, and of these, Thomas King is a native poet, and Dorothy Livesey is a woman poet. What is a native poet?
Belonging to that place.
Yes, yes, correct. So you find all these poems which have been mentioned. Um, you find these poems. You need to, read it. You have to go in details of all these poems, because you might get questions from all these poems. Um, have any one of you read about these poems? These are specific poems which have been already defined in your syllabus, and you have to, go through these poems. I covered two. One is Margaret Atwood and Ondarchi. Any of these poems you would like me to cover?
Yeah, I heard about Thomas King. Coetus sees the prime minister. So I read, can you just briefly mention why is it become so famous? Like, why, I mean, is it because its native language is being used, or why is it like, it's like it is? I heard it in this even while preparing for the assignment question. Also, I was going through. But
Mm.
what really is like, I really didn't understand. I mean, is it because of some kind of the language that is being used in this poem? Is it why it is famous, or is there any other significance in it? So I, if you can, if you have time, or just
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll tell you. Um, okay, just a minute. Give me 1 minute. Let me just take out King Thomas. Just taking out the just a minute. Actually, materials on these Canadian poets you hardly get. Mm, I'm trying
Actually,
to.
this is the first class we are attending, sir. There are like certain newly introduced or vaguely taken subjects are there in IGNO. Nobody touches them. It's my bitterest experience in this 2 years, really. I mean, MEG is 17, 19. There are certain subjects. So actually, what I'm really not able to understand is I'm understanding the language, but
Yeah.
why it is significant, like in like any other like British poetry, American poetry, you get vast explanations and all. So, but
Yeah.
like this one, I'm
I,
really.
I am I'm trying to um, see. Just a minute.
So the
Give.
same, likewise, even Alperdi. How do you pronounce Alperdi? Even he is like kind of a famous. And in few questions in previous years, I've seen these being asked. So I'm little puzzled and worried that what is to be seen in this. Like, if at all we have to address this question.
Mm-hmm. No, no. I can tell you about this poem. I will tell you the analysis. You want this analysis, right?
Yes, sir. Like why this Thomas King's coetus?
Okay.
He's the prime
Yeah,
minister.
I have the. I'm just searching for the full poem. Just a
Yes, sir.
minute.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Okay. So you see, Thomas King was born in Sacramento in Canada in 1943, and he is a you know uh, Cherokee, German, and a Greek descendant. King was raised in California and later becoming a photojournalist in Australia. And in 1986, he completed his PhD in English and American Studies in the University of Utah, UTAH. And he taught, the native studies at the University of California, the University of Lay Bridge, and the University of Minnesota. And he was also the chair of the American Indian Studies. So King is currently, you find he's a professor of creative writing at the University of Guelph, that is in west of Toronto. And Thomas King has written several highly acclaimed children books. Um, you find King first published his novel in 1989, The Medicine River, and it marked him as one of the important voices in Canadian literature. So his use of humor, well crafted dialogues, and an honest portrayal of day to day life of natives marked the book as an important work of fiction. And in 1990, King tried to radically, redefine how theorists, view uh, native literature. In the article, Godzilla versus post-colonial King challenges, the view that all native literature is a reaction to colonialism rather than an extension of longer native tradition. So the term post-colonial serves in King's, opinion, to reinforce the legacy of colonialism. So you find the coyote went, east to see the prime minister. I wouldn't make this up. And the prime minister was so happy to see Coyote that he made him a member of cabinet. And maybe you can help us solve the Indian problem. Sure, says Coyote. What's the problem? When Eldwood tells the story, he always laughs and spoils the ending. So you find this one is one of the most remarkable poems to come from Canada in recent times, and it has layerings of irony, and the irony is devastating. But first, we need to know a little about Coyote. So Coyote is a you know a stricter figure in a Canadian oral literature. Okay, so you find so stricter. Do you understand what is a stricter?
Someone who commits frauds and something like magician also in a way, and
Stricture is stricture character is um, you know a mischievous kind of you know um, a playful character. So you find the whole history of exploration and the the extermination of the natives, which gets telescoped here. What is also attacked is the white tendency to treat everything in terms of solutions and problems, and it is a grim story whose ending gets spoiled by Eldwood's laughing when telling the story. The problem has been solved, and so what's the problem here? The typography is very important. When King wants to put extra emphasis on a word, he capitalizes it. And that is, he capitalizes laughs. He capitalizes what's. He capitalizes help. He capitalizes happy, him. Okay. So all these, the poem, foregrounds a number of things by capitalizing words. This typographical device foregrounds or gives a very sharper edge to the irony deployed by King. And this irony is, strongly reinforced by the references to making things up, to telling a story and to, spoiling and ending. So Eldwood's laughing when telling, this story is quite significant because that points to the natives' constant awareness that though things are terrible, they are funny too. And the reference to the spoiled ending takes a dig at the way most such stories are expected to end. But you find at the core of the king's poem is Coetus saying, "Sure, what's the problem?" in response to the Prime Minister's statement. Maybe you can help us solve the Indian problem. So you find the irony is in maybe. The Prime Minister saying, maybe you can help us to solve the Indian problem. So the irony which lies in maybe as well as in the approach that is always solving problem of various kinds. So what's the problem? Is in this context works at many levels. Then there is the poet's own statement. I wouldn't make this up. The interposing of this between make and up is a very very effective move because it touches up the traditional images of natives as those who make up thing make things up, and the play on happy and laughs helped by the capitalization adds to the richness and the edge of the irony, which the poem uses in a structure of remarkable economy and tautness. So there is also a meta narrative which impulse at work here, as also remarkable, self reflexity about what the poet narrates. So another notable, Thomas King's piece that is significant here is One Good Story That Won, which was singled out by Margaret Atwood as an example of the creative use of subversive laughter. Here we are told a story about telling a story and about the kinds of story that are expected to the author, like a archetypal figure, the strict Betson, a native writer, easily adopt a multiplicity of styles and the forms to which their purpose, and is so doing her are giving birth to a new literature, a written literature that which you can say finally and gratefully being given to us by the first people of our country, which enable us to hear voices most of us have not heard before, bringing to life people, places, experiences, and the problems. Okay, so this is all about this poem.
Yes, sir.
Rashmita, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We have a
Yes, sir.
group. We have a group. Can you please, if you are okay, you can join the group, that WhatsApp group, so that if I'm sending something or any sort of note, something that I want to convey, I will convey in that so that it will be easier for you to, get.
Sir, please, do note the number.
No, no, I'll give you the link here. You can just join. Just a minute. Wait.
Okay, sir.
Irka Ali, can you hear me? Sorry, Ikra. Ikra. Sorry. Ikra, can you hear me? Hello. Ikra, can you hear me? Uh, Rashmita, did you get the
Hello. Yes, sir.
link?
No, sir. Please send again.
I gave it in the chat box.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
I have others joined the group.
Sir, I have joined.
Yes, sir, I joined.
Bhagyashri, have you joined? Chavi,
Yes, sir. I have already joined yesterday.
Yes,
Chavi,
sir.
have you joined?
I'm there, sir, and
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I covered three, and I think you can cover the rest of the poems. And if you have any questions, we can take. Otherwise, we can end the session here for today.
yes, sir. And tomorrow, will you be doing the artwood, the third one, sir, surfacing?
Yeah, yeah. We'll do surfacing tomorrow. Correct.
Sir. Okay. So one of the days I may miss. I'm just wondering, like just one surfacing. I really wanted to cover. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can we leave?